Graphics and Signs can handle anything you throw at them. Located at 101 East Renfro Street, Suite C in Burleson, Texas, go in and see them. Call them at 817-991-0523 or reach them on the web at www.acceleratedgraphics.net. They are loud and proud and want to serve you. Accelerated Graphics.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
Out-of-date carpet giving you the blues? Tired of your old dingy and broken tile? Let my friends at the Floor Store in Cleveland, Texas give your home the makeover it deserves. This is Old Taco Joe coming to you for the Floor Store. Whether it's carpet, tile, wood flooring, or real wood laminate, the Floor Store can cover all of your flooring needs. Located at 405 West Henderson Street in Cleveland, Texas, owner Brent Harris can help. Shower tile, tub surrounds, even backsplashes. Give them a call today at 817-641-9444. The Floor Store, they got you covered.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Hey, there's something you forgot to do. It sure is hot. Are you sweating like a dog? Wait, what? Dogs don't sweat. Oh no, you forgot to get your window tinted. Whether it's the kitchen window that sits in the sun for the hottest part of the day, or you just got new wheels, call Sharp Window Tinting in Burleson. 817-615-9379, or look them up on the web, sharpwindowtint.com.
Good evening, folks. My name is Angelo Rocha. I'm the host of Vet for Vets, a show where I actually sit down with a veteran and I interview them. Normally, they're from Johnson County, but we had a little bit of a change in game plan. So tonight, I am going to be talking to probably the most important veteran that I know in my life, and that would be, I guess, me, in case you were wondering. So tonight's show, if you're listening, to all my friends and family, I'm going to be discussing my life, before my military service, during my military service, and maybe what I've done up to today. So if you're interested, please join me in this episode of Vet for Vets on the Joco Community Radio that you can listen to 24/7. Okay, so about me. My name is Angelo Miguel Rocha. I also have a second middle name, Perez, P-E-R-E-S, but I don't use that very often. I was born on August 22nd, 1979. Yes, 79. That is a long time ago. Very long time ago for some of these listeners, if you're listening. So I was born in Portugal. I'm sure if you know this country of Portugal, it's basically, if you look at the map of Europe, you got Spain and then you got the face. And I live in really southern part of Portugal called pretty much near Lisbon, except it's called Algarve, or you can say Faro, Algarve. It's like a little district. So I grew up there in a little small village. This village was about as small as it can possibly get. Had nothing there, absolutely nothing. The only thing I remember growing up was soccer. Just everything everywhere was soccer. Everywhere. I mean, there's soccer balls flying up, down, left, right, everywhere. I never even heard of baseball. I never even heard of football. I've never heard of basketball. Pretty much until I grew up and came into America. So where we grew up, we were pretty much impoverished. This little village, slash town of Algarve, literally had nothing there. My family, my grandfather, my grandmother, who I love to death, God bless their souls, basically did everything they could to give our family everything. And we grew up with literally nothing, and they tried their best. I had a lot of uncles, a lot of aunts that pretty much made their way through life, and we had nothing. And I remember that. I remember my mom and dad struggling. I remember things even now. I mean, I don't remember anything 5 minutes ago or maybe even a day ago that maybe somebody might have mentioned to me, but I remember things when I was a little child. I remember my mother and my father arguing all the time and fighting, trying to be what's best for me and my sister. So in today's episode of Vet for Vets, I'm going to discuss me and why I joined the military. So, because there's a lot of people that were interested. They were asking me, Angelo, why don't you do a show about yourself? So that's literally what I'm doing today. And I figured it's a good way to start the 2023. So around 1987, my grandfather didn't like what was going on with Portugal. There was a lot of liberal policies, a lot of socialism policies, a lot of things that involved basically the government taking, and giving you shit, giving you nothing. So my grandfather and my family decided to go ahead and migrate to the greatest country in the world, which is America. So my grandfather, my grandmother, and a bunch of other family members moved. My dad was the last one. So my dad finally took us to America. And I remember the first day I got to America, which was around August of 1987, I believe. I remember seeing snow for the first time because where I grew up in Portugal, I've never seen snow. And I remember making snow angels on the first day I was there. And maybe it wasn't August, maybe it was like December, I think, maybe, because I wouldn't be able to make snow angels in the summertime, but because it's been a long time. Anyway, I grew up there in a little area of New York City called Brooklyn. I'm sure some of you know this little town. A lot of times there's a lot of crime back then. And I remember we lived there for a little bit, and then my grandmother got mugged twice within like a 1 or 2 week span. And they were like, okay, we need to get the heck out of here. We're not going to stay around this area if our family is just going to get mugged and robbed. So we decided to migrate to another state, which was right across the Hudson River to New Jersey, where my family pretty much just, I guess, lived the lower cost of living life, but also worked in New York City. So we were always traveling across the river using the subway station or the bridges to go get a good job. My uncles thrived, my aunts thrived. My mom and dad, maybe not so much. My mom and dad grew up when I was growing up with them. They did not know a lick of English when they came to America. My dad knew a little bit. I knew nothing of English. I mean, I might sound like I know how to speak English right now, but it was a lot of years where I literally was very nervous. I was very shy. I was unable to talk to people, you know. And where I grew up, pretty much in New Jersey, was a little town called Harrison, New Jersey. I mean, after we moved from town to town, eventually we made our way to this little 1 square mile of a little town called Harrison, New Jersey. It has a lot of history there. Back in the day, the prohibition, there was a lot of illegal activities going on down there under the tunnels. There's very famous tunnels down there in this little town called Harrison, New Jersey. Basically, the mafia ran the little town of Harrison, New Jersey back in the day, and things happened. But all I remember was that my mom and dad, regardless of having no money, basically living very poor, still did their best to try to give me and my sister whatever we wanted. There was times I remember my mom or dad didn't have the money to get me something that I wanted from either Kmart, Walmart, or whatever was available at the time. And my mom and dad like, no, we can't give it to you, Angelo. We can't give it to you. Of course, they're speaking in Portuguese. And then out of nowhere, for Christmas, there's the bicycle, or there's the drawing pad, or there's shoes, or there's something that I wanted that I never thought my dad would be able to get, considering we were living literally paycheck to paycheck. So went to high school. Oh, excuse me. I went to middle school there. Did a good job. I mean, I did okay. But then there was a sixth grade teacher. I don't remember her name. I think her name was like Miss Novak or Kojak. I can't remember her name. Her name was something like that, Miss Novak. It was sixth grade. And I remember, I guess I don't know what it was. Maybe she had this thing against me from being an immigrant, or maybe whatever. Because I was always I was always a nice child. I was always very, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, as far as I remember. And for some reason, this sixth grade teacher, Miss Novak, didn't like me at all, regardless of how nice I was to her. So basically, her animosity towards me, basically, I started to hate her to the point where I was making fun of her. I was acting out. And eventually I stood back in sixth grade. So, and because of that, I kind of got held back and pretty much in, from everybody, all my friends that I knew, including some friends now that are on my Facebook. Uh, it was heartbreaking at first, but then at the same time, it was also I'm a big believer, that God puts me where I need to be, and and I believe that God gives you the people that you pretty much need, not the people you want. And I became friends with more people when I stayed back in sixth grade, and then I was able to find leadership and mentorship through people like Mike Landy, Miss Fusello. Me and her are still friends on Facebook to this day. And she's the teacher that I remember getting me into drama, getting me into the idea of acting in school plays. And that's pretty much what I did in middle school. I was actually cast in quite a few plays under her belt. And I kind of got the love for TV, the love for movies through her and Mr. Landy with the art, and eventually got to the point to where I felt like this is where I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to be involved with movies and TV shows. Had no inkling about anything to do with the radio. Then all of a sudden, a couple years later, I'm in high school. I'm already starting the art stuff. I'm doing pretty much drama with there was this teacher there. Her name was Mrs. Shields. She was the wife of the principal at the time, Mr. Shields. Really great man. I really don't know what they're doing these days, if they're both alive or one is not. I have no idea. But they pretty much pushed me in the right path, as far as I knew. And I was geared to do either film, TV, or something of that nature, art. That's what I had in my mind. So, but I didn't have the money at the time. And yes, as much as I didn't like the military, I felt like the government at the time, the country of the United States and the government had given my family more than I could have asked for. And I almost felt inclined to kind of help the country out by joining the military, which I did. I joined the military back in 1998. And I didn't actually go into boot camp until 99 because I actually was a delayed entry program. And it was actually, I think, the best decision I could have made, because I was intending on going to school there. Not only am I serving my country, but I'm going to get $40,000 for them GI Bill to go to college. So as soon as I joined the military, everything was great. I got shipped to boot camp in Fort Knox, Kentucky. Spent a couple months there, met some really incredible people who I'm still friends with today. Then some of us pretty much got stationed in the same location after our AIT, which is in advanced individual training. And that was in Aberdeen, Maryland, where I pretty much learned to be a mechanic and kind of do military stuff. And then right after that, I remember it just kind of moved right to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where I just kind of became home with the field artillery people. Became a kind of good. I was their fastest runner on base. I was a really, really athletic. I didn't have my injury that I have now. And then right around 2 years after I joined the military service, something happened called 911, which I'm sure just about everybody knows. And my life that I had planned for film and TV and writing and screenwriting and producing, everything that I had pretty much what I wanted to do just pretty much got sidetracked. So I had to change all my pretty much lifestyle or my career trajectory because I wanted to stay in the military. My goal was at the time to just pretty much serve the country that gave me the greatest gift in the world, which was living in America. And I was going to go ahead and use it to get my 20 years in, and then I was going to retire through the military. And then while I was in the military, I was going to go ahead and go to either film school or TV school or screenwriting school. But because the 9/11 happened, everything just kind of went to shit. So I had to change my tune. And I stopped pursuing that. I stopped my art. I stopped everything for the pretty much to fight in Iraq. So then my orders came down, and I went to Iraq for the first time. And that 1 year was probably the most, I guess, stressful. At that time, it was very stressful. I remember it smelling like, it smelled like rotting corpse when you first got into Iraq because you don't get into Iraq right away. You go and they ship you to Kuwait. They take you by bus to your location in Kuwait, like your tent city, and then you gather up all your personnel, and then they tell you, hey, this is the day you're going to go. You're going to get shipped out, and then basically we all convoy up to either Baghdad or wherever they decide to send you. And I remember being there the first day we arrived. I remember driving for four straight days, I believe. We're talking about 14, 16 hours a day. I don't, it's probably even more than that because it just went by so quickly because you're so stressed out about hoping that you don't get sniped, you don't get blown up by IED, you don't get killed from stupid crap that you do, you know. So we get to Baghdad, and at that time I was an E5, which is a sergeant. And at the time when we first got into Baghdad, all E5s were the only ones allowed to be on the 50 caliber on top of either the Humvee or the tank or the truck, whatever is vehicle that we were using for our convoy. And I remember going into Baghdad, and there I am holding the 50 cal, and I got my face cover and got my hard hat. And oh man, the devastation that it's something that even to this day I can recall. I remember just we're driving down this main highway, and to our left, buildings are blown up because they're destroying them. The U.S. is just dropping bombs after bombs, all of these high security facilities and stuff. And I remember just being scared for my life. The whole time I was praying to God that nothing happens to me because I still hadn't had my daughter Daniela yet. She wasn't born yet, so I didn't have something to kind of go, you know what, this is I'm doing it for her. So at that time I was kind of going, you know what, I pray to God nothing happens to me because my family's going to miss me. My family's going to, is going to be sad. Just the thoughts that were going through my head, but I did what I had to do. There were some things that I'm not proud of, but at the same time I did it for my country. There's things that I keep to myself even now. Even if I'm on the radio, I'm going to keep to myself that I did do. I did things that no person would ever want to do because you have to do it because it's either them or you. And I did it. And not many people can say they did it. I can't say what it is because because I don't want anybody to think of me differently. So I did my tour. I did my 1 year completely stressed out because that's the one thing that stressed me out the most, not the fact that, okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be safe. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stay out of the way of these machine guns, these mortars, these grenades. But the most stressful part was making sure that all my soldiers that I was in my unit, I was making sure that they did what they're supposed to. So none of them got left behind or none of them got killed. And none of them ever did under my command or my seniority at the time, my rank. They all made it home the first deployment. Of course, and my unit is highly deployable at the time, and I didn't know it was highly deployable at the time. So I did my tour, and all of a sudden I get promoted again. And now I'm a staff sergeant E6, and everything's coming down the pipeline that hey, we're gonna get deployed again. we're going to get deployed again. A situation came up. Pretty much I guess my rank was kind of, I guess, up for grabs because of something that happened. That pretty much it was not in my control. Maybe one day in the future I might just talk about it. But either way, we got orders to go back a second time to Iraq. And I tell you what, that second time was just about the most stressful thing that I can think of. Yes, we had more time off the second deployment because the first time we went, we were able to do things that kind of paved the way for the second group of people and the third group and the fourth group. But that second time, every time we went on the convoy, that's when the Iraqis were really, really upset with us. I mean, they were mortaring us every day. There were times where I would do 24-hour shifts on the sergeant of the guard, or what they call the SOG. And I remember just being so tired and sleepy, I'd close my eyes and I'd lay down on my bed after pretty much doing 24 hours of guard. And I would lay down, and all of a sudden, like an hour later, woo, 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 everybody take cover, incoming. Oh, it's like crap. When you first get there, you do what you do what you're gonna do, which is take cover. You go ahead and grab your gear, you grab your helmet, you grab your stuff, and you go inside of these little bunkers or inside these concrete barriers. But after about the 100th time, within a matter of like 2-3 months, eventually you're like, screw it. If it's my time, it's my time. Luckily, nothing ever happened. But you just got tired of that mortar over and over and over again. I remember there was this moment. The first time we deployed, I remember we were in the border of Iran and Iraq. And I remember there was this little town called Konakin. And this little town, pretty much, I guess you can say it's a Kurdish town. It was demolished by the Iraq-Iran war, completely devastated. You would think that it was us that did it, but it wasn't us. It wasn't the U.S. Armed Forces. It was the Iranian forces. I guess when they invaded Iraq, or when they had the war in their 80s, in the 1980s, they destroyed the whole town. Everything is just rubble, bricks everywhere. And then you got a leader like Saddam Hussein, who had an opportunity. He had an opportunity to make himself the savior of Iraq by using his money, the billions and billions and billions of dollars that he had, to fix all of these small little towns like Konakin and others. The hundreds and hundreds of towns that had the ability to possibly finally fix things that were damaged. But no, what did he do? Instead of fixing his roads, fixing his buildings, his schools, the electrical grid, what did he do? He bought golden toilets. He bought golden mansions. He bought golden steps. He got golden pools. Everything's golden this, golden that. And then he wonders why people were after him. Because he had all of this money and he had the ability to help his own country folk. And then he didn't. And now, I'm glad he was captured. I'm glad he was executed, because these people were literally starving to death. They were hungry. They wanted back their schools. They wanted electricity. So when we were there, guess what we did? We hooked up all of their electrical components. We fixed their electrical towers. We fixed their lighting systems. And all of a sudden, one day, they powered up, boom. And sure enough, there it is. They got lights for the first time in decades, since probably the 80s. They actually have lights that are on 24 hours a day, not 1 hour a day, 2 hours a day. They actually have electricity that's on the whole time. So at night, they started celebrating. They're shooting up their AK-47s and machine guns all up in the air. And we thought we were being attacked at this little rec center that my company was in. If any of my army buddies are listening in, they'll tell you it was kind of one of those days where we didn't know we were being fired on or not. If we were under attack, because it just sounded like it was this rampage of gunfire and volleys into the air. And then all of a sudden we took cover. We had our sniper points, we had our shots ready to go, and all of a sudden word came down on the radio, hey, it's nothing there. It's nothing there. It's just they're celebrating. The next day, when these people came up to us and were hugging us that they finally got electricity, I was just thinking, you know what? That hug could have been for somebody like Saddam Hussein, if he would have just used that money to fix that city and other cities. But he was pretty much a I guess you could say the word is piece of shit. Straight up piece of shit. So then, we had our moments there the first time. We had a lot of great moments, and sadly, there was a couple of soldiers that died that I was friends with. And one guy was from Kilgore, Texas. His name was Private Wyatt. He pretty much they pretty much I don't think they did it because of that, but there was an incident where there was these young teenage boys. They weren't really teenage boys. They were like 18-year-old boys that were shot for trying to pass a traffic control point. Because in Iraq, whenever we're doing security, we got to put up these traffic control points that pretty much these people have to stop. They get checked. We check for weapons. We check for explosives. We check for anything that's illegal. And if they do have weapons, then we just got to make sure we account for it. So that way we know if it's used for a future crime, we know who it belongs to. And what happened was they went and tried to go through this traffic control point because they were in a hurry to go wherever. And all of a sudden they lit up this vehicle, and one gentleman was killed and the other one didn't. The other one just barely survived because he had his shoulder blown out, whatever. And what happens, I guess the family and the people of that town got word that our unit did it. So they retaliated by putting down IEDs and pretty much, and something happened and Private Wyatt was killed. A lot of heroism was shown that day. We had at one point a translator actually grabbed a dropped M16 or maybe an M4 and actually used it to protect and suppress fire against the enemy, which is insane to me. But that's stuff that you don't hear about. And of course, I did stuff. And the reason I'm bringing that up about Private Wyatt is because the day before he died, I wasn't in charge that day, but basically I had worked a whole shift fixing these Humvees because I'm a pretty good mechanic. I love working on engines. I love working on cars, trucks, vehicles, and just in general, just love working on engines. Just something about me. I just always loved it. Kind of like the way I love art and music and film and TV. And the day before, he came up to me and said, "Hey, Sergeant Rocha, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you, but my Humvee needs." Like it was some kind of fluid. I remember. I don't know if it was transmission fluid or if it was engine oil, but I was absolutely livid. I was pissed off at him to the point where I'm screaming and I'm like, "Oh my God, how many times do I have to tell you, you damn privates? You got to get ready to blah, 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 blah." And he pretty much was near tears, but I gave him the oil that he needed or the fluid that he needed. He left. He comes back again right after I'm about to close up shop, and he's like really pretty much at this point he's like really scared of me, like he doesn't even want to talk to me. But I'm like, "What do you need, Private Wyatt?" He's like, "Sergeant Rocha, I need zip ties." I'm like, "You need zip ties?" It's like, how many times do I tell you guys, every time you need something before a convoy, you guys got to get everything you need before you do this, but you always show up the last second. So then I go and I tell him in the back of my truck where the zip ties are. He goes to the back of my truck. He can't find them. And I'm like, "Sergeant Rocha, can't find them." Like, "It's over here in this spot, blah, 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 blah." He goes and can't find it still, the zip ties. So the third time he comes around, I mean, of course, I'm like a parent. I'm like, I stomp my way to the Humvee. I'm like, "God damn it, I'll tell you exactly where it is. God dang it." I'm cursing up a storm. He's, feeling embarrassed. And all of a sudden, I open up the back of the truck. I open up this compartment, and there's the zip ties exactly where I told him where it was. And the look on his face, I grabbed the zip ties in my hand, and I just literally threw it at his chest. All the zip ties just splatter everywhere. And I told him to pick it up. And so I didn't think anything of it. So then I know he's going to go on the convoy tomorrow. And so far as we know, we're 100% on return rates. And all of a sudden, the next day, the vehicle gets hit by ID, and he just happens to get a piece of shrapnel through his window and kills him. And the vehicle flips. He gets crushed by the vehicle. And I didn't know this. So then I find out about it. You don't understand the torment that it gets on somebody like myself, because I know he was a good kid. Yes, he didn't listen at times, but I know he was a good kid. He recently married and everything. It was tough. It was tough. And then we get to this whole town of Connaughton showed up for his funeral. But anyway, at the commercial break, we're going to talk a little bit more about my life in the military and some stuff about me. I'm not telling you all of it, but I'm going to tell you most of it. Thank you for listening.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car. Introducing the Feather Chair Wheelchair. At 13 pounds, it's the world's lightest wheelchair. It folds in seconds and fits neatly in your trunk, backseat, or closet, so you can take it everywhere. And it's only available right here. Order yours today and get a free wheelchair case, a $50 value, yours free. The Feather Chair, the world's lightest wheelchair, is just $4.99 with easy payments as low as $16 a month. Sorry, no Medicare or insurance accepted. So call right now to order yours.
800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. 800-823-5826. That's 800-823-5826.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
Out-of-date carpet giving you the blues? Tired of your old dingy and broken tile? Let my friends at the Floor Store in Cleveland, Texas give your home the makeover it deserves. This is Old Taco Joe coming to you for the Floor Store. Whether it's carpet, tile, wood flooring, or real wood laminate, the Floor Store can cover all of your flooring needs. Located at 405 West Henderson Street in Cleveland, Texas, owner Brent Harris can help. Shower tile, tub surrounds, even backsplashes. Give them a call today at 817-641-9444. The Floor Store, they got you covered.
Welcome back, folks. My name is Angelo Rocha. This is Vet for Vets. Thank you for joining me. Normally, I would have a veteran of Johnson County here in front of me, but what happened was there was a delay. They couldn't make it. You know, and crap happens, or how the term goes, shit happens. And I'm going to talk today about me, about myself, some stories that are maybe pertinent to nobody other than me. But since it's my show, I'm going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. But before we continue on, I'm going to read a little thing for the Joco Community Radio. Joco Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas, and is live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoco.com is the place to find all the ways to listen and watch, and the station app is absolutely free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store, check out our lineup, and more at JocoCommunityRadio.com. This episode and more are brought to you by Patriot Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your Texas sales rep at 844-TEX-HAIL. That's 844-839-4245. Be sure to dress your arms and more at thetiffy.com. Thetiffy.com, you need to go to that website. It's actually got some pretty cool stuff there for Tiffany. In case you don't know, Tiffany is also a Jersey resident where I'm from. Actually, we kind of live pretty close to each other. Maybe she might be a little bit further out than I'm thinking, but either way, me and her pretty much grew up close together. And she also celebrated 20-year anniversary recently with her and her husband, and that's fantastic. They went to Mexico. It was great. So let's continue on about me. And also, I'm a big supporter of the veteran cause. I try to get involved with as much veteran stuff as I can. So stuff happened, got deployed several times, been through many different bases. I did my time in their service. I felt like I did enough for my country. Around 9 years in, 9.5 years in, pretty much it was time for me to come up on reenlistment. And my unit was telling me, "Oh no, there's nothing out there for you. There's nothing out there for you. Might as well just stay in another 10 years." But at that time, my daughter was a couple years old and I was missing all her big moments. I was missing her first steps. I get emotional just thinking about it because this is she basically was the deciding factor of why I led my career that I have now, which I'm going to talk about. She basically, I missed all her first big moments, her first words, her first steps, her first everything. If you're a mother and you're a father and you love your children to death, regardless of how old they are, you'll always remember those big moments. And I missed them because I was fighting for my country and I was doing things for my country. You know, my daughter recently had a grandfather named Kermit Myers pass away, you know, and he was like, at the time, you know, even though his daughter, Brandy Myers, and I divorced and we were married for 8 years and we were together about 10, he was always supportive of me, of my future. He was always wanting to hear what I was doing with my life, even after we divorced, even though we were living in separate areas. He still always asked me like what I was doing. And so right after I got out of the military, I joined this fantastic company where I thought they were fantastic at the time. And things change. Union Pacific Railroad. They needed a really good diesel mechanic. So I applied and I got in, which is very hard, by the way. Getting into the railroad is a really difficult task because it's mostly nepotism that gets you into the railroad. I happened to do it on my own with nobody connected to me in the railroad. I just happened to do it and they loved me and I got the job. And I'm glad I chose to get out of the military service because I ended up meeting somebody the first day I was there for the last 10 years has been pretty much who I call my wife. Yeah, you know, it's somebody who I feel like is possibly the love of my life, which I'm hoping she feels the same way. I feel like she's that person in everybody's life that they should have where they feel like if I was on a deathbed, regardless of how old I was, from a disease, from natural causes, if I was on my deathbed, and if they can picture the person that they're with next to them holding their hand, that's the person I see in Summer Ingersoll. She's that lady that, like, if I'm dying of something and I'm dying, and of course, my daughter's going to be there, my grandchildren are going to be there. And I see Summer being there for me, holding my hand as I'm taking my last breaths before I go into the other side or wherever that may be. Could be the celestial, could be terrestrial, could be wherever. Either way, I have this love for her that I can't explain. She is what most people call the good and the bad in somebody. She's like my best and my worst because there's times where she stresses me out the same way I stress her out. It's all 50-50 with me and her. This is Vet for Vets, and she has been my most loyal supporter of what I'm doing with my life. Literally, from the time I got out of the military to now, she's been supportive of me since I can recall. She knew I was a screenwriter. She knew I know how to write for film and TV. She knew I was a filmmaker. She knew I knew how to do stuff. And one day, Union Pacific pretty much does a layoff, mass layoffs. They can lie, they can brag about why they laid people off. But ultimately, I'm a big positive person. I'm optimistic. And I felt like it was something new I can do. So I went ahead and started writing again. I started doing things that I didn't think I would be able to do again after all these years. And all of a sudden, my first big screenplay that I do, and I win this big competition. You know, and then I win another competition, then won another competition. I'm like, man, this is pretty cool, you know, and I'm getting a little bit of funding. I had enough money to where I started my own company. I have this company out in Beverly Hills, California called Saints Angels Armageddon Pictures, what I call SAA Pictures. And it's been a very, very optimistic company for me because I was able to get in contact with a lot of famous celebrities who I'd never thought I would be able to talk to. I was able to talk and meet with people like Roseanne Barr, who were in talks about doing a TV show. I've met people all over the world, British people, Australian people. I have connections that I just never thought I would be able to do. And then, of course, then I have my commercial, my General Electric commercial that I still can't believe happened to me. Because back a few years ago, General Electric had this competition. It was basically one of those, hey, submit 5 pages and for your chance to have your screenplay or your little short film made for as a commercial. So I went ahead and submitted this idea. They did. They submitted it, or I submitted it, and all of a sudden, a couple months later, after I submitted it, they contact me and they say, "Hey, guess what? You've been chosen as the top 12." And I'm like, "Oh, cool, top 12. That's pretty cool." All right. I'm like, "Oh, okay, I guess it's not." At the time, I didn't think it was a big deal. So I went ahead and prepped. I got a lot of storyboards. I had everything happen, and all of a sudden, I take it to I think it was Chicago or somewhere up in the north, and I'm there in the headquarters, and I'm showing them all my storyboards of this idea for this commercial. Not only do they love it, they're like, "Oh my god, I think you might win this." And all of a sudden, they had their panel, and all of a sudden, they chose me the winner. They gave me a little prize money, something else. A couple, no, then I come back to Texas. A couple months later, I don't hear anything from them for a while, and all of a sudden, a couple months later, my boss at the time, his name is Mark Prince. He was the director of the Union Pacific shop. He calls me into the office and he goes, "Hey, there's some guys here to see you." And I'm like, "Okay." So I meet these two gentlemen in one of the offices. These two lanky, weird-looking dudes. And but one of the guys I kind of that I've met, he looked familiar, and all of a sudden they introduced themselves to me, and they're like, "Hey, we're from the Sesame Street, pretty much the company that does all the puppets, the Jim Henson, people." And I'm like, "Oh my god, cool! This is cool." So all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, this is we're here to discuss the drawings for this commercial." And all of a sudden so all of a sudden I tell them exactly how the commercial is going to go, and they get their concept, and then all of a sudden I don't hear anything again for months. I'm like, "Okay, cool. I got to know them." This whole time, nobody in the company that I was working with at the time, Union Pacific, had no idea that I was in contact with these people. So all of a sudden, I call in for 4 days because they need me to go to Chicago for near the headquarters. So I go to Chicago for 4 days. This is before I was even with Summer, I think. Maybe I don't remember. Maybe it might have been before Summer. They send me to Chicago for 4 days. I go out there and I do this commercial. I was there the whole time watching the filming. It was incredible. They had this gigantic animatronic puppet. It was called the Ugly Idea. Stuff happened. They had me wearing the costume. I'm all nasty from wearing this. I came up with ideas with the director. Everything was going on. Everything that's happening. And after 4 days, I come back here to Texas. I don't hear anything from them for months and months and months. All of a sudden, I get an email one day, and it's from one of the people, the assistants of the director, saying, "Hey, the commercial's finished." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I watched the commercial, and it ends out. I saw the commercial before it even came out on television or anywhere else, and it was like the greatest commercial I had ever seen. And I could not believe that I'm the one that created that whole commercial, the whole thing. Oh my god! I mean, even now, you could probably look it up. You could Google "ugly idea" General Electric commercial. That was me. That was all storyboarded by me. Other than the fact that the creature itself was different than what I originally had imagined, but it was pretty much all me. Everything from top to bottom. The idea, then him turning into like a peacock character at the end. Pretty much how General Electric pretty much just changes and makes it for better. Turns your ideas into, your ugly ideas into better ideas. And so all of a sudden, at work, they found out about the commercial and they start calling me Hollywood. And then right after that, literally a couple years later, then all of a sudden, the Union Pacific itself had a commercial to be done. They went ahead and the person in charge at the time, who was kind of the assistant to the director, pretty much made me one of the main veterans for the commercial. So what they were going to do is they're going to take me out to the middle of nowhere. They're going to have this background, and I was just going to talk about the military and what it's done for me, being an employee for Union Pacific. I spent 4 hours there, literally being interviewed as best as I could. Did a bunch of shots. I did all of this. I did extra footage. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be in a commercial, someday. So all of a sudden, a couple months later pass, and sure enough, there I am on TV in the commercial for Union Pacific. But it's not at all what I thought. It was just basically me in this commercial for like 1 second. After I spent a whole day filming out there in the middle of nowhere, I was in the commercial for 1 second. It was just basically me doing a job I didn't even do for Union Pacific. All of that interviewing and getting emotional and talking about the military, it was all for nothing. Somewhere out there in their storage facility, they have this. They have this footage of me being interviewed. Maybe one day I'll find it. Maybe one day I won't. But either way, so a couple years ago, I was getting back to where I got laid off. I started writing again, and I started winning competitions. I started my own company, met a lot of great people, made some connections. Now I have pretty much an office in Miami. I have an office in New York. I have an office in Beverly Hills, California, and I have my office, which is not really an office. It's just me here in Texas. People are like, "Why aren't you in California?" And I'm like, first of all, I effing hate California. It's a socialist state. It's horrible. Homelessness everywhere. If you're from California, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's just a shithole. And I don't want to be in that lifestyle. And also the fact that I got to be close to my daughter and my family. I don't want to separate my wife and my stepdaughter and my daughter away from their families just so I can pursue my Hollywood career. That's why they have Zoom. That's why they have Google Meet. That's why they have video chats. So that way I can do everything, which I have been doing for the last few years. I've been in contact with some of these people. Are you like, what? No way. Yes, I've been in contact with them. And people are kind of caught off guard that how some of these connections are big time names. You know, Kirsten Dunst. Me and her have this idea for a TV show of mine, which I've been posting all over my social media for a TV show called Hanjo. It's a samurai epic. Her company contacted me about having a meeting about potentially turning that show into a reality. Then, of course, I have the chat meetings. I talk to her. I meet her. I had a crush on her, for Christ's sake, when I was young. And this woman wants to turn my show into something that I don't want it to be, because what I want it to be is historically accurate. She just wants to turn it into an action film or an action show. And it's like, no, you don't understand the idea behind it. It's about legacy. It's about honor. It's about the respect for your elders, family, all of this stuff. And she's not understanding that. She just wants to create another samurai epic like every other movie. She's basically like, if I was talking about Fast and Furious before it came out, she wants to turn it into this action movie about cars, and then it turns into a series of movies that are crap. And I had a feeling she was going to do that, so I said no. So then all of a sudden I got in contact with Jason Bateman, who was doing this show called Ozark. His company, me and them contact me, and they love my screenplay, and they're like, okay, what we want you to do is we're going to give you $8,000, and we want you to film a short film. And of course, that short film ends up being kind of crap because the little girl that I wanted originally is not good. It's not good at all. So that gets turned down. And then all of a sudden, my screenplay for Hanjo starts making a way around the competition circles. It starts making and winning all of these competitions to the point to where to put it in perspective, every time I post something on social media, my family is like, "Oh, yay, congratulations," or "Yay, good job." But they don't understand the amount of difficulty it is to attain some of this stuff. My cousin Alfonso Henrique, who lives out in California, knows this. He knows how hard it is. It's a very dog eat dog competition there in California. He does productions, he does TV shows, he does movies, he does it all, and he knows how hard it is to make yourself stand out. I mean, this website that I'm currently involved with all these competitions literally have 1 million screenwriters. 1 million screenwriters. Okay. Okay. Now put it into your head. 1 million people are in one room. Out of that million, there's 1,000 people that stand out. Okay. 1,000 people out of 1 million stand out, which is very hard to do. And out of that 1,000, I'm in the top 100. And then out of that top 100 people, I'm in the top 20 in my category, which is drama, TV show. And my family is just like, oh, good job, good job. My friends are like, good job, good job, good job. My wife is like, good job, good job, good job. Everybody's like, but they don't understand how hard and difficult it is to even put your name out there. So now, not only am I getting emails from all of these producers and people who are prominent in Hollywood who are actually made people, but I have a feeling my next year or two, possibly even 3 years, it's going to be a very, very optimistic and opportune one for me and my family, you know. And doing this show kind of helps me kind of stay on par with what's going on with veteran life, you know. And I talk to veterans about my show, Vet for Vets. I've interviewed so many veterans here, and I've interviewed a lot of veterans before I even got this show. You know, the show was successful in Los Angeles. We did that for about 2 years. It was great. Of course, I didn't host it. We had somebody else to do it there that lived in California, in LA. They did the show too. It was perfect. The way he started, the way he ended, it was great. But of course, our viewership and the listeners just started dwindling and dwindling to the point to where it was costing more to do the show than it was to actually maintain it. So we couldn't do it. In California, they're not big supporters of, military as much as they are other states. So eventually we stopped. And I just happened to live in this little town in Burleson, Texas. And one day, me and my wife Summer were walking through this small like art festival, and I see this angel, I guess you could say. Her name is Tiffany Carlin. And all of a sudden, I don't know who she was. I just ran into her. I walked into her studio when it used to be over there by Old Town. And I walked inside and she's telling me, yeah, we're a radio station called Joko. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I gave her, and I told her about this idea that I've had, that I once did, and I think you should do, called Vet for Vets. And she goes, oh my gosh, I love that. You and I need to come up together a way to do this. Things happen, but literally for the next 2 years, we stayed in contact, but we never actually talked about it. It just kind of never happened because I was always doing my thing with my writing and my shows, and she was doing her thing with her shows and her radio show and her, her shops and pretty much the million things that she does. And then a couple months ago, I emailed her again. I'm like, you know what? I think it's time, because everywhere I go, I always see these veterans who are just looking depressed. These veterans on the news that always commit suicide, all these veterans who are lost and homeless, all these veterans that are basically just lost boys or lost women who have no idea how to get help from the VA. And I thought, how cool would it be if there was a radio show for the Johnson County veterans that would tell them about stories that they can get help from other veterans, maybe somebody they might have run into. And my intention of this show is to where people of Johnson County, we're talking about Crowley, Burleson, Cleburne, Godley, all of these little towns in Johnson County. Basically, I want these veterans to kind of put their story out there, because some of them have been through some of the most horrific, most traumatizing, most heroic moments of anybody's life. And you have no idea when they walk into that Walmart. You have no clue. And they're basically voiceless. They can't tell the world, hey, look, I saved a little girl. Hey, I did this. Hey, I got this, Purple Heart. Hey, I did this. You got guys like Bobby Riley who are injured, who are long-term damage, brain damage, facial scars, fighting for our country. Nobody knows who he is. So he comes on the show, and now he's my best friend. He's my best bud. And like I said, God doesn't give you the people you need. I said that wrong. God doesn't give you the people you want. God gives you the people you need. And I need people like Bobby, people like Victor Martin, people like my wife Summer, people like my ex-wife Brandy, especially people like my daughter Daniela Rocha. And speaking of Rocha, by the way, my last name is Rocha. Yes, everybody knows me as Rocha. But if you're from where I grew up, it's actually Rocha, like the way you say it in Spanish. Spanish people, every time they introduce me, they say Rocha. Angelo Rocha. I was like, yes, that's how you say it. But I say Rocha because that's pretty much, it rhymes with mocha. And also, I was teased a lot when I was growing up. Teased a shit ton. I remember in middle school. God, I used to get bullied big time because of my last name, to the point where I had to change it. And of course, I didn't know how to speak very good English. And how did I learn English? Watching television, watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, watching Sesame Street, watching Lamb Chops, watching all these cartoons like Transformers, watching all these fantastic shows that I just have an admiration for. Films. The first time I ever saw a film was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And this is when I was young, when I was just a child, maybe 3, 4 years old. I remember going to a movie theater back in the day, and I remember seeing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and I remember thinking it was the greatest thing I've ever seen in my whole life, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do what they did. And then, of course, then through the love of film and TV and writing, you just kind of pretty much you gain your experience by actually looking into it. You know, I learned a lot. I learned a lot. I can't explain to you how much I learned a lot growing up from these people that were great mentors, great leaders in my life. People like my grandfather, Angelo Rocha. My dad, yeah, he was a he was a good dad, but there was things that he did where it's not a good dad. My mom was a great mom. Loved my mom to death. If anything ever happened to my mom, I don't know what I'd do. My sister, Monica Rocha. You know, when we were growing up, we used to fight all the time. But as we got older, now I love her more than I've ever loved any sibling in my life that I have. And she's my only sibling. But, you know, it makes me think about the time when I used to have another sister. When I was 3 years old, how life could have been if I had my other sister before she passed away from issues to deal with asthma. The life I could have had with 2 sisters. You know, and now I led this amazing life. I think it's only getting started. One of these days in the near future, you're going to see my name on the billboard, you know, written by or produced by or directed by Angelo Rocha or whatever Hollywood name they decide to give me. My cousin Alfonso keeps telling me that I'm going to be the next Ben Affleck other than being old. He even told me one time, he goes, you know what, you're going to be the next Harvey Weinstein with all that touchy stuff. And I'm like, oh, great, thanks. Because he had the stream where I was an overweight producer who was making dreams happen. That's hilarious to me. But as much as everything that's happened to me in my life, I got 1 minute here left to go of this show. The one thing, regardless of what she believes in, regardless of how her life goes, March 16th, 2005, my ex-wife Brandy gave birth to the most beautiful child that I could have ever had, or I could have ever dreamed, for Christ's sake. She was the daddy's girl. And now that everybody probably doesn't know, or maybe some people didn't know, I just want to put out there that my daughter, regardless of her age, even though she's 17, she is a woman. I promise you, she's the woman. She's pregnant, and I'm going to be a grandfather. So I'm kind of not ready for that. I'm only 43 years old. But I love that woman, that child of mine, you know, more than life can life itself. Okay, I'm hoping you guys keep listening to my show, Vet for Vets. You know, please give me notes. Tell me exactly what you want me to talk about. And hopefully you get to know some of these fantastic veterans here in Johnson County. I love y'all. Take care of yourselves and have a good night.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County, Joco Community Radio.
Wilfred Brimley for Loafing Dog.
I'm Wilfred Brimley for